Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. We are now 1 month into the government shutdown. Some areas are planning to use local funds to pay for food stamps. And President Trump is now calling for Republicans to slash the Senate's 60-vote threshold, a move Democrats tried during Biden's first 2 years. Potential terrorist attack averted. FBI Director Kash Patel says agents have arrested multiple subjects in Michigan. From New York City to Virginia and New Jersey, voters will head to the polls next week to cast their ballots. What are the races to watch and what we know about top contenders? The President and First Lady bring Halloween joy to children by handing out candy to trick-or-treaters on the White House South Lawn. And a look at various celebrations around the world.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Today is Friday, October 31st. I'm Stephanie Cox. We're now 1 month into the government shutdown. With food stamps set to lapse, some local governments are resorting to emergency measures. President Trump is calling for Republicans to use the so-called nuclear option to bypass votes needed from Democrats in the Senate. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
Lawmakers in Washington, D.C. out of session amid a stalemate and a month-long government shutdown.
It means that tens of millions of American families will struggle to keep food on the table because the SNAP program benefits will run dry. It means that WIC assistance, that's women, infants, and children, the nutrition programs, will be at risk of running dry. It means that Head Start centers, which serve 60,000 children nationwide, will be at risk of closure.
New York has declared an emergency to provide 40 million meals statewide for those who rely on SNAP benefits. It comes as a federal judge weighs ordering the federal government to tap into a $5 billion contingency fund to avoid a lapse in the food stamp program.
This is Congress's fault, not his fault. This is Congress's fault. So when it comes to SNAP, the only solution here is we need to appropriate the money.
Senator Hawley is pushing a bipartisan bill to fund the program until the shutdown ends, but Republican leadership hasn't put the workaround bill on the floor.
It's a bill I'd happily support and vote for. And as soon as Thune would let Hawley put it on the House floor, it will pass. Plain and simple.
Leader Thune says Republicans' short-term funding bill already addresses SNAP benefits.
And we've tried to do that 13 times. And you voted no 13 times. This isn't a political game. These are real people's lives that we're talking about. And you all have just figured out, 29 days in, that, there might be some consequences.
Thune says while talks at the leadership level are stalled, it appears bipartisan talks with rank-and-file Democrats are gaining steam. President Trump, though, is done waiting for Democrat buy-in. He's now calling for Republicans to slash the Senate's 60-vote threshold, called the nuclear option. On a late Thursday post, he wrote, "It is now time for the Republicans to play their Trump card and go for what is called the nuclear option. Get rid of the filibuster and get rid of it now." Democrats tried to eliminate the filibuster during Biden's first 2 years, but 2 Democrat holdouts rejected the move. It would allow for the majority party to pass any legislation on a simple majority vote. Some warn it could erode constitutional guardrails that keep the Senate as a deliberative body. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins addressing Americans a day ahead of the lapse of SNAP benefits. She explains why the Department of Agriculture cannot use contingency funds to cover the food stamps.
So the fact that the Democrats are saying, but wait, USDA has money in their accounts, why it is really their fault, I've seen it over and over and over from some of their leaders, is absolute false, and it is a lie. We have been saying on October 10th we sent messages out, on October 24th we sent messages out. These benefits end on November 1st. Now, let me get down into a little bit of the details on that to better explain. So there is a contingency fund at USDA, but that contingency fund, by the way, way, doesn't even cover, I think, half of the $9.2 billion that would be required for November SNAP, but it is only allowed to flow if the underlying program is funded. It's called a contingency fund, and by law, contingency fund can only flow when the underlying fund is flowing. So, for example,
Rowland said her message to America is that the government is failing them right now, and poverty is not a red or blue issue. The Agriculture Secretary did mention a silver lining, that there is a national conversation on the SNAP program. She noted that the cost of the SNAP program rose to unprecedented highs during the Biden administration. She said that under President Trump, the USDA is making the program more accountable. She said they're stopping illegal immigrants from receiving benefits and rooting out fraud and abuse. The Agriculture Secretary implored Senate Democrats to vote for the continuing resolution and not hold the most vulnerable American families hostage over a political agenda, is how she said it. And the president's top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, said the government shutdown is a negative for the economy. Hassett spoke to reporters at the White House this morning.
The U.S. economy is very strong. We're looking at third quarter GDP that's close to 4% growth, and excuse the lots of wind. And I think that that's a momentum that will carry forward. The government shutdown is looking like it might reduce that number quite a bit, especially going into the fourth quarter. And but the momentum from all of President Trump's policies is really, really strong.
As federal SNAP benefits are set to run out tomorrow, volunteers at a Manhattan food pantry are filling the gap. Large boxes of eggs, carrots, peanut butter, and canned goods are some of the staples being distributed. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on their efforts.
Shakira Cruz is pantry manager at the Holy Apostles Soup Kitchen in New York City. She said people were lining up.
We have a lot of seniors here. There's tons of seniors. There's a lot of disabled people. So they rely on us because the SNAP is just not enough.
New Yorker Diana Del Saint doesn't receive SNAP benefits, but she still relies on the food pantry.
The pantries help me out too as well. So I really appreciate the pantries, because without the pantry, that's when we would really have problems.
Alan Joseph does rely on SNAP benefits, so the food pantry is critical as funding for the program runs out.
This is a big break, the SNAP, because when you go to grocery shopping now, it's high. If you got the SNAP, it doesn't matter how much they give you, but that would be covered juice, milk, eggs. Everything costs a lot of money now.
Alejandro Morales volunteers at the Holy Apostles. He also receives SNAP benefits, so he's preparing by budgeting the money he receives from the program.
I'm not concerned about it because I know ahead of time. Once I know ahead of time, I know how to proceed. I have been through this before.
Funding for SNAP runs out tomorrow, November 1st. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And the shutdown is beginning to create major disruptions in airports across the country. Vice President J.D. Vance is warning of a disastrous holiday season if flights are not back on track soon. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy yesterday expressed concern about air traffic controllers who haven't been paid during the shutdown.
I think as each day goes beyond that last paycheck that didn't come, the stress gets bigger. And as I'm trying to expand the number of controllers that we have in our airspace, you guys know we're about 2,000, 3,000 air traffic controllers short. This makes it way harder for me to get new controllers to come in and to keep the controllers that I do have working in the airspace.
The Federal Aviation Administration yesterday reported delays of more than 2 hours at Orlando Airport, 90-minute delays at Washington National Airport, and 20-minute setbacks in Dallas, all tied to staffing shortfalls. Flight tracking data showed nearly 6,000 flights were delayed and more than 1,000 canceled, with 1 in 5 United Airlines flights affected. Duffy said air traffic controllers are now on track to miss a second paycheck. And the FBI says it has thwarted a potential terrorist attack. FBI Director Kash Patel says agents arrested multiple subjects in Michigan who were plotting a violent attack over Halloween weekend. Patel promised more details later. He also praised the men and women of the FBI and law enforcement everywhere, saying they're standing guard 24/7 and in his words, crushing their mission to defend the homeland. The Dearborn Police Department in Michigan confirmed it was made aware of the FBI operations in the city and assured residents there is no threat to the community. Homeland Security says death threats against immigration officers have increased 8,000% this year. A new report shows a rise in online threats, stalking, and harassment targeting ICE agents and their families. The DHS says they arrested an illegal immigrant living in Dallas earlier this month for posting a video on TikTok allegedly offering $10,000 for the murder of ICE agents. Other incidents include threatening phone calls and social media posts against officers and their spouses. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin says political rhetoric demonizing ICE agents has contributed to the surge in violent threats and assaults. The White House says critics have likened ICE agents to the Gestapo and the secret police. Meanwhile, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says ICE will not pause operations on Halloween. That's in response to a request from Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Voters in several states will head to the polls next Tuesday to cast their ballots. Democrats and Republicans will compete in races for governor, state attorney general, and state Supreme Court justices. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the races to watch.
Tuesday will see candidates in several states vying for votes. In the Virginia governor's race, Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl-Sears will face off against Democrat Abigail Spanberger. Spanberger has consistently led in polls, with an 8% advantage in the most recent polling. Voters in New Jersey will pick their next governor as well. Democrat Mikey Sherrill is competing against Republican and former state assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli. Though Sherrill is ahead, the most recent polling shows her lead at just 1%. In Virginia's race for Attorney General, Democrat nominee Jay Jones will take on Republican incumbent Jason Miyares. Republicans have pushed for Jones to drop out of the race after text messages surfaced in which he talked about shooting former House Speaker Todd Gilbert. During a debate on October 16th, Jones publicly apologized to Gilbert, saying he was ashamed. Spanberger, the gubernatorial candidate, has refused to call for Jones to drop out. In Pennsylvania, 3 Democratic members of the state's highest court are up for re-election. Christine Donahue, Kevin Dougherty, and David Wetsch have no opponents, but voters will decide if they should remain on the bench. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And we're now almost a week into early voting in the New York City mayor's race. Polling shows Zohran Mamdani is still leading Andrew Cuomo by at least 10 points. NTD's Arlene Richards has the latest.
As the early voting deadline approaches on Sunday for the New York City mayor's race, new polling shows that Zohran Mamdani still has a commanding lead, despite earlier polls showing Andrew Cuomo cutting that lead in half. 3 new polls were released on Thursday as Mamdani and Cuomo picked up new endorsements. An Emerson College poll shows 50% of likely voters in support of Mamdani, followed by 25% for Cuomo and 21% for Sliwa, with 5% still undecided. Meanwhile, a Marist poll released overnight found Mamdani with a 16-point lead over Cuomo at 48% to 32%. Sliwa trailed behind at 16%. And finally, a Quinnipiac poll released Wednesday showed Mamdani's lead over Cuomo narrowing from 20 points to just 10 at 43% to 33%. But the numbers aren't slowing down the candidates' last push for votes. All 3 candidates have been making final pitches to voters around the city before Election Day on Tuesday, November 4th. Cuomo picked up a handful of endorsements Thursday, including from former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg, Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi of Long Island, and Republican Hudson Valley Congressman Mike Lawler. Mamdani's latest endorsement came Wednesday morning from the United Bodegas of America. Despite expressing concerns about Mamdani's plan for city-run grocery stores, members now stand behind Mamdani, saying he wants to make the city affordable for everyone. Mamdani has said there's room for both sorts of establishments in the city. Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa picked up an endorsement on Wednesday from the New York Young Republican Club. He took his campaign underground Thursday morning, holding a news conference at the 57th Street subway station in Midtown. Cuomo has been calling on Sliwa to drop out of the race, saying a vote for Sliwa is a vote for Mamdani. But Sliwa remains defiant about staying in the race. With more than 372,000 ballots cast during early voting so far, voter enthusiasm remains high for this election. And with 6 days to go until the polls close, it remains to be seen whether the pollsters got it right. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And as you've been hearing, Election Day 2025 is coming up in just 1 week. NTD's Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer will bring you our live special coverage of all the biggest races, from New York's mayoral election to the governor races in New Jersey and Virginia. Tune in on Tuesday, November 4th at 7 p.m. to get the latest election results with live analysis from our data reporters and our on-the-ground teams. That's Tuesday, November 4th, starting 7 p.m. only here on NTD. Don't miss it. And next, torrential rain in New York yesterday killed 2 people in the city. Visuals coming in of flooded streets and water flowing down the stairs at subway stations. Flights were disrupted yesterday at JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark airports as storms swept through the region. In Brooklyn, streets turned into rivers with cars submerged and commuters wading through deep floodwaters. Weather officials confirmed record-breaking rainfall in Central Park and LaGuardia Airport. The National Weather Service issued coastal flood and wind advisories for all 5 boroughs throughout midnight tonight. And the death toll in the Caribbean from Hurricane Melissa has risen to at least 49. The hurricane has swept past Bermuda and is moving north. Haiti suffered the most casualties, even though it wasn't directly hit. Authorities say 30 are dead and 20 people are missing after torrential rains and widespread flooding. In Jamaica, officials confirmed 19 deaths and hundreds of thousands without power after the island took the brunt of the Category 5 storm. Satellite images showed flattened homes and stripped trees across Jamaica as crews cleared roads and search efforts continued. In Cuba, more than 700,000 people were evacuated ahead of Melissa's arrival. The hurricane caused widespread damage to homes and crops, but no reported deaths. The U.S. has pledged immediate humanitarian aid to Cuba. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said yesterday the U.S. will provide assistance directly and via local partners who can most effectively deliver it to those in need. Billionaire philanthropist Bill Gates has just released an interesting note on how he views the dangers of climate change. In a new blog post, he disagrees with those who say nothing matters more than limiting the rise in temperature. Gates says this view is wrong. He still says we should reduce emissions, but says the Doomsday outlook is causing much of the climate community to focus too much on near-term emissions goals. And that's diverting resources from the things we should be doing to improve life in a warming world. With us now is Kevin Stocklin, reporter with the Epoch Times, who's been following this story. Kevin, you say that Gates's post appears to mark a significant shift in the debate over climate change. Why?
Oh, hello, Stefania. It is a radical departure in some ways. So up until now, the narrative has really been that climate was a ticking time bomb, and that we had a very limited amount of time before the results were going to be catastrophic. And this was the message not only coming from Bill Gates, but from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, from Al Gore. There was talk of climate catastrophe and oceans boiling and famine and wars, etc. And now Bill Gates is coming out, and he's not the only one, and saying, well, temperatures will rise, that's a fact. But it's not the catastrophe that we thought it was going to be or that we said it was going to be. And so we should focus on other things to promote human welfare.
Now, the blog post is written as a message to the UN Climate Change Conference in Brazil. It seems significant that it's not only aimed at the UN, but at a UN climate change conference.
Yes, absolutely. So he's not only talking to the public, he's talking to a lot of the advocates for climate change policy. So it will be very interesting to see how this resonates in Brazil in November.
And how's the reaction been to Gates' post so far?
You know, somewhat predictably, the climate advocates, climate activists are not pleased. I think they still want to press that this is a pending catastrophe. But I think a lot of the people critics of the climate change narrative are happy to see this admission. So much of the predictions are based on climate models. They're not based on actual observations. And even the UN Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which is considered by some the gold standard for climate science, has not found detectable trends for increase in extreme weather. So the science, as it were, isn't really supporting this narrative that catastrophe is impending. It's really been more the politicians who have taken that tack.
And the Trump administration's policy on climate change is in stark contrast to the previous administration. In your article on the Epoch Times, you note how a recent Energy Department report poured cold water on some of the more dire climate change predictions. What were your key takeaways from that report?
Yes. So what the Department of Energy report said, and this was produced by a diverse group of scientists. So echoing, actually preceding what Bill Gates has said, that the catastrophe from climate change is overstated, and that our previous policies to end fossil fuels and focus on investment in wind and solar were misdirected for a couple of reasons. One, that it's really not making enough difference in CO2 levels. China by far is the #1 producer of greenhouse gas emissions. India is also up there and growing very rapidly. And it's driven up energy prices for Americans. The parts of the world that are really leading the charge on eliminating fossil fuels are Europe, and they are now seeing some of the highest energy costs in the world. Many of the blue states in the United States are seeing the same thing. And so a lot of this report is saying that America needs abundant and affordable energy, and that wind and solar is just not going to get us there.
And is the Trump administration's position likely impacting the overall climate change discussion or narrative?
It's very interesting to ask that, whether he's changing the narrative or whether the public has come to the same conclusion. I think he definitely has opened the floodgates for a lot of scientists now to voice their opinions, where previously they might have been censored in social media by tech companies or in the mainstream media. So I think a lot of scientists now feel free to speak out in criticism of the climate narrative. But I think a lot of people are also struggling to afford energy, to pay their electricity bills. And so for this reason, I think there was a lot of public frustration that was out there even before the Trump administration and this DOE report.
Now, circling back to Gates, is he expected to step back from climate change advocacy now?
Well, so as you mentioned, this report is not saying that climate change isn't real and it's not a major issue. He continues to maintain that. What he's just saying is that we need to shift our focus towards helping the poorest people who will be disproportionately affected by climate change. So we need to focus on health and welfare. And, the fact is oil and gas and their derivatives are responsible for feeding the world, and the world depends on affordable energy for its prosperity and for its health. So I think Bill Gates is still very interested in playing kind of a controlling role in global policy, but I think he's shifting his focus from ending fossil fuels towards what he calls increasing health and prosperity.
Well, it's been great to speak with you about this, Kevin Stockland. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Former FBI Director James Comey is asking a federal judge to throw out 2 criminal charges accusing him of lying to Congress. Comey's attorneys argue his 2020 Senate testimony was truthful. They say the questions posed by Senator Ted Cruz were fundamentally ambiguous. In their filing, they say Cruz's lengthy and confusing questioning could not serve as the basis for a false statement charge, adding that Comey's responses were literally true. The Justice Department indicted Comey in September on counts of making a false statement and obstruction, both of which carry potential prison time. Comey has also accused the Trump administration of pursuing a politically motivated prosecution and using an improperly appointed prosecutor. Now, you won't find Disney's channels on YouTube TV, at least until the two can come to an agreement. Disney's channels were removed from YouTube's pay TV platform after the two media giants failed to reach a new carriage agreement before yesterday's midnight deadline. The blackout leaves subscribers unable to watch content from Disney networks, including ESPN, ABC, Disney Channel, FX, National Geographic, and Freeform. The two companies remain in talks, although neither indicated when customers can expect programming to resume. The blackout should come as little surprise to YouTube TV subscribers who for the last week have seen announcements warning of a stalemate. Since last Thursday, Disney has run public messages notifying YouTube TV customers of a possible blackout. And Apple says it's heading into what could be its strongest quarter ever. The company's latest earnings report, released yesterday, shows fourth quarter revenue climbed to a record of more than $102 billion. It was reportedly fueled by steady demand for the new iPhone 17 lineup. Apple CEO Tim Cook said the company expects the December quarter to be its best ever, both for total revenue and iPhone sales. Cook says new AI-powered tools like Apple Intelligence are motivating people to upgrade their iPhones. And Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang said he hopes the company's state-of-the-art Blackwell chips can be sold in China. He said the decision is up to President Trump, though. Here he is today commenting on the Chinese market.
The China market is large and it's a vibrant market with a lot of developers. And those developers create AI technology that's exported from China all over the world. And so to the extent that American tech stack can run and to operate those AI models, it's good for the United States and around the world.
Huang was speaking a day after Trump met Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. Washington has imposed export curbs on Nvidia's most advanced chips to China, citing national security concerns over potential military use of AI technology. Huang says U.S. restrictions have cost Nvidia almost all of its business in China, reducing its market share there from 95% at the start of the Biden administration to virtually zero. He estimated that access to the Chinese market could be worth between $35 billion and $50 billion a year. And here's something you don't see every day: 3 billionaires eating fried chicken and drinking beer. That was the case in Seoul, South Korea, yesterday, where the CEO of AI chip giant Nvidia went to a chicken and beer joint with the leaders of two of South Korea's global tech titans, Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor Group. Chimaek fried chicken paired with the ice-cold draft beer is a must-have for anyone visiting South Korea. The three visited at Kanbu Chicken in the heart of the nation's capital ahead of the APEC summit in Gyeonggu. Video from local news outlets showed the group linking their drinking arms to take a shot of beer, a gesture that in South Korea cements friendship while drinking. The group picked up the bill for everyone in the restaurant. I'm Stephania Cox, and this is World Watch. Dutch centrist party D66 won the most votes in Wednesday's general election. The ANP news agency is now putting its 38-year-old leader, Rob Jetten, on course to become the youngest ever prime minister in the Netherlands. With almost all votes counted, D66 can no longer be overtaken by the right-leaning Freedom Party led by Geert Wilders. This comes after the election was at a tie yesterday after initial counts. D66 is now expected to take the lead in a first round of talks to form a coalition government. The process usually takes months. Jetten is now urging mainstream parties from the left and the right to unite and work together. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth today met his counterparts from several countries, including China and India, on the sidelines of the ASEAN Defense Summit. The face-to-face sit-downs in Malaysia come as Washington seeks to boost regional security ties. Here's Hegseth.
And we don't seek confrontation, but of course we're ready to protect our interests, individually and mutually. And that's why we're publicly announcing the Task Force Philippines here with you today, which will be another step in our cooperation. I'll just say real quick, I want to express the gratitude to the Minister Singh, for his time, for the partnership we have with India. It's one of the most consequential, the U.S.-Indian relationship in the world. And our strategic alignment is built on shared interests, on mutual trust, and a commitment to a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific, which is precisely the conversation we had It was the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest. And this new 10-year defense framework, which we signed, is ambitious.
Hegseth called the 10-year defense cooperation with India framework a cornerstone for regional stability and deterrence. On China, Hegseth said on X that he told Beijing's representative the U.S. would stoutly defend its interests and maintain the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. He also voiced concern about Chinese initiatives in the South China Sea and around Taiwan. The Philippines and the United States have formed a new joint task force to strengthen cooperation and increase military readiness. Its area of operation will also include the South China Sea. And Taiwan is rejecting Beijing's latest push to bring the island under China's control. President Lai Ching-te today said Taiwan will never accept Beijing's one country, two systems model used in Hong Kong and Macau. He told troops at a military base that only strength brings peace, vowing to defend the island's sovereignty and democracy against Chinese aggression. The remarks come as Taiwan commissions its first battalion of a series of American-made Abrams tanks. Lai has vowed to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2030.
We must remain dignified and determined, maintain the status quo, and resolutely oppose annexation, aggression, oppose the promotion of unification, and one country, two systems. This is because we will always uphold a free and democratic constitutional system.
Taiwan purchased 108 M1A2T Abrams tanks from the United States as part of a broader effort to upgrade its defense capabilities. The first batch of 38 tanks arrived late last year and completed live fire exercises in July. A second shipment of 42 tanks arrived this past July, and the final batch of 28 is expected early next year. The Abrams tanks join other high-end U.S. weapons systems, including upgraded F-16V fighter jets and HIMARS missile launchers. Britain has revised down estimates of its wind power output by nearly 30%. As a consequence, an analyst says this could mean higher subsidy payouts for wind farms and higher energy bills for UK consumers, with subsidy costs potentially locked in for decades. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
The British government has cut forecasts for how much energy wind farms are expected to produce. The new estimates reduce the load factor, that is, the amount of the year turbines are expected to generate power, from 61% down to 44% for offshore wind turbines, and from 49% down to 33% for onshore. Andrew Montford, director of Net Zero Watch, said that about 10 years ago, the then Conservative government increased the estimates of how much power a wind farm would produce by roughly a half.
They went up from roughly 40% of capacity to 60% of capacity, and we said that this was complete nonsense, and we've been campaigning to get the numbers made more realistic ever since.
Montford says the now reduced figures are more realistic, but it also means the government will have to pay more money in subsidies to secure the same amount of energy in the upcoming wind subsidy auction. British Net Zero Secretary Ed Miliband has sought to phase out fossil fuels and increase reliance on renewables as part of his Clean Power 2030 plan. Developers have been offered an initial budget of $1.4 billion annually in support of new offshore wind farms. Since the subsidies are contracted to run for 20 years, Montford said Britain could get stuck with high prices for energy.
I mean, much higher than they are today, perhaps 30% higher than they are today, which would be a catastrophe for the economy.
A wind turbine's efficiency can be affected by numerous factors, such as high or low wind speeds, and how often the wind farms are paid to switch off to prevent overcongestion on the electricity network. These are called system costs. Montford said it's not possible to get energy prices down without drastic action.
So to get bills down, we need to eliminate those system costs, and the only way to do that is actually to close the wind farms down. So not only have you got to cancel the CFD subsidies, but you've actually got to say to the wind farm, sorry, you're going to have to close.
He says this is a huge step that would face lots of challenges, from investor confidence to international agreements as well as national laws.
All those things need to be overcome, but that is the only way to get bills down.
A Net Zero Department spokesperson said wind power is a secure and reliable power source, saying the next renewables auction round will prioritize value for money for households. This week, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates called on the United Nations to make a major strategic pivot away from what he termed a doomsday view of climate goals. While saying climate change will still have serious consequences, Gates said it will not lead to humanity's demise, and suggested money could be better allocated to things that make society more resilient, such as crop resilience and healthcare. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, UK.
Today is Halloween, and to celebrate, the White House opened its gates yesterday to some of its youngest guests. President Trump and First Lady Melania greeted trick-or-treaters on the South Lawn. Children, parents, families got to meet the first couple and collect full-sized candy bars. The guest list included military, law enforcement, foster and adoptive families, as well as administration staffers with children. The South Lawn was transformed with jack-o'-lanterns, skeletons, and spooky music as kids in costumes made their rounds. The celebration marked a return to full-scale festivities for Trump. His last Halloween event at the White House in 2020 was scaled back due to the pandemic. This year's celebration came just after the president's overseas trip, where he met with leaders from Japan, South Korea, and China. And Americans aren't the only ones celebrating Halloween. Some countries in Europe are joining the festivities. In Belgium, residents got into hollowed-out pumpkins to paddle around a pond. Pumpkin growers, along with the local kayaking club, have hosted the event since 2008. It features teams completing a relay race using the giant pumpkins as boats.
Because it's a unique event here in Belgium and almost in Europe. I don't know any other place which does this with pumpkins.
It's awesome. I mean, it's fun to get outside with the rest of the family, and it's something for all ages. So yeah, it's just great, very creative. So yeah, nothing but bonus points. Yeah.
Belgium isn't the only European country celebrating Halloween either. To the east in Kosovo, 19 rescued brown bears were enjoying the holiday. Sanctuary workers carved pumpkins and scattered chestnuts across the forest for a seasonal feast. Visitors watched the bears hunt for pumpkins stuffed with apples and carrots.
My first time, I was brought here by some friends, and they have been speaking about this place for a very long time, and I've been very excited to finally be able to see it myself today. So it's been a lucky day today.
We really liked what we saw. We loved the landscape. We loved the bears. So yeah, for us it's a must to come back here regularly. And today is amazing, of course, because today we really saw something special that I think, yeah, we won't see that fast again.
And for the bears, Halloween is a special treat. The sanctuary near Pristina opened in 2013, and the safe haven allows bears rescued from captivity in Kosovo and Albania to roam, forage, and hibernate. And in Texas, hippos turned pumpkins into ghoulish goo, chomping down with their mighty jaws for a Halloween treat at the San Antonio Zoo. Daring zookeepers dangled the pumpkins into the open mouths of the massive animals. The hippos reduced the pumpkins to a juicy pulp with their powerful bites, munching the mangled remains. An ancient community ovens bring villages in the Italian Alps closer together. Residents share the ritual of baking black rye bread, a tradition that dates back generations. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the high-altitude bakeries.
At 4,000 feet, this small Alpine town is firing up its ovens. In the early hours of the morning, a group of local residents gather at the old bakery. Ski coach Stefano Sirocco says it's a community atmosphere.
We're a group of friends who get together to relive a little of what our grandparents used to do. We come here a couple of times a year and make bread.
In the past, a private oven would often be too expensive to fire up every time for baking. So community ovens in each village played a crucial role in feeding the local population. Since 2015, the Low Pond Air Festival has revived the old practice.
Bread used to be baked once or twice a year. It was something precious. It had to turn out well. We sometimes make mistakes. We burn it, and it's not a big deal. In the past, they had to be careful. The whole village contributed. They turned on the oven several days in advance to heat it. We do it too, but now we have thermometers to measure everything.
For just one day a year, these community ovens are fired up. Communities gather, flour is needed, and the loaves are baked.
Bread making season was always before Christmas, in late November or early December. Bread was baked only once a year, and then the bread had to be stored. It was placed on special racks in well-ventilated rooms, especially attics. The racks were hung from the ceiling, well above the floor, to prevent rodents from feasting on it. And then, the bread was eaten hard.
Today, residents don't rely on community ovens to supply their bread, but they help bring locals together.
A major challenge for mountain communities is depopulation and demographic decline, which leads to a small number of people living in each village. Therefore, these opportunities are crucial because they truly act as a glue. They help hold together communities that would otherwise risk falling apart.
Sirocco agrees with the sentiment.
The value, in my opinion, is in reviving the hamlets and small villages. We are 80 people today. The hamlet of Volon was probably more populated in our grandparents' time. We are just a few people, but the whole village is reviving.
Other Alpine villages are reviving their baking traditions. Officials say the latest festival brought together 65 community ovens in the Aosta Valley. Approximately 800 volunteers took part in this year's gathering. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Election season is back. Socialism is on the ballot in New York, and Trump-backed Republicans in Virginia and New Jersey face their Democratic opponents for governor with results that could impact each party's future. Watch these key races and more during our live special coverage with live data analysis and on-the-ground teams. Join NTD's Steve Lance and Tiffany Meyer on Election 2025, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NTD.